Hello and welcome everybody to According to Andrew number 80. Is dogma good or bad? So this is an idea that I've kind of been wrestling with for a long time. I actually had to dig through my notebook to try to find something. I wrote about it last year at some point. Because my ideas on this have changed quite a bit over the time. And this is more, the, the, the thing I was talking about a year ago is more in reference to like philosophy, whereas these other thoughts are more in reference to like truth, right? So it really should be, is dogma truthful or a lie, right? So the first thing I wanted to kind of talk about was, you know, so let's first off set up the definition of dogma. So the official definition of dogma is a principle or set of principles laid down by an authority as an incontrovertible truth. So that seems, if we've been following anything with how a lot of the lies in our world that surround us have been perpetrated or whatever, they've effectively been done through dogma. It's effectively a definition of what appeal to authority is. So that right there kind of has me as a big red flag of like, oh, this is just simply a appeal to authority tool that certain people use to try to uh, control people, to lie. But then I got started thinking, and you know, uh, there's I listened to Dave Smith and his Part of the Problem podcast, and he makes a good point on there where he says there. I'm glad that most people aren't as interested in this topic as I am, and that not everybody's trying to make a podcast about libertarianism and stuff like that, because that's what he talks about. Because if they did, then there wouldn't be anybody building roads or plowing fields and bringing food to the grocery store and things like that. And those are all very important jobs, and not everybody has the time to, um, you know, work and think about all this stuff and do some of these intellectual pursuits. Now, that's not exactly true. You can kind of take the time if you want to, uh, but it's going to be more of like a hobby kind of thing. There's basically when I'm talking about that is I'm referring to there's a great post by Vox probably a year plus ago where there was a guy in the 1800s who had a list of 100 books that any man that considers himself educated should read, and it was targeted towards like working class individuals. It's like these are the things that working class people should read, and you had the Bible on there, obviously. The Quran was on there. Um, you had, I have it saved somewhere. I don't remember all the books that were on there. Those are the two that I remember off the top of my head. But you know, it had a lot of the classics. You had your Aristotles, you had your Plato's, you had your um, a lot of advanced knowledge, and so to kind of think that these are the things that people were studying in their free time and kind of thinking about and working towards. It's one of the reasons that 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s civilization was so vibrant, as it were. And so, if but at the same time, we also know from again going kind of off of what a lot of Vox is working on and stuff like that, that there are a lot of rhetorical thinkers. So there's kind of this dynamic and kind of gray area where dogma sits, where in one aspect it can be used as a good tool, and a lot of this comes just down to the morality of how it's being used to a certain extent. Um, but there are still some question marks as to whether or not it is uh, legal is not the right term, but uh, whether it's a net good or a net negative, and whether it is a tool more uh, used by the fork-tongued devil, or whether it is something that we use to perpetuate truth. So the primary good that I see out of it is with rhetorical type thinkers and just things that have been worked out over a long period of time in very complex ways where you have to research this stuff for a very long time and go at it uh, in a lot of different ways. This can kind of, for the people that don't want to spend that time doing that intellectual pursuit, these dogmas can be a way that they can refer back to say, this has been sorted out, this is what the rules are, and it helps maintain traditions and kind of create bulwarks against the the undermining of your civilization, and basically what the critical race theory, that's the big thing right now, um, which has been around for a while, but the whole idea is being so hypercritical of the Western civilization as to undermine it. And so these tools of dogma and stuff like that we've kind of lost over time, and religion and things like that, are tools that you can use to buttress these traditions and prevent those type of people, those snakes and those deceivers, from destroying your civilization. It's not exactly the greatest tool, but at the end of the day, like, not everyone is going to be able to rationally like, there's a lot of rhetorical thinkers, and those rhetorical thinkers appeal to authority, and a lot of the fallacious arguments really work with them. And so this is a way to kind of uh, communicate that in this way. To get back to what I was, oh, and then the other side of that, so you have the rhetorical side of that, but then the other side of that um, is is the is dogma simply the noble lie, right? So Plato, um, there's a if I ultimately everything comes down to Plato or Aristotle. Are you of truth, or are you of the lie? And uh, where Aristotle was of the truth and Plato was of the lie. I think I might have not made that clear when I said that last. So dogma could also be used in a way of like, well, these people are too dumb to figure this stuff out. They couldn't possibly comprehend all this stuff. So we will use this dogma. We will create a noble lie in which, yes, they're not really living in reality, but it is better than the alternative. Oh, and a lot of things can be used to justify that. A lot of what's going on with the uh, COVID stuff was probably based on that whole thing. Oh, they couldn't handle the truth. A lot of whenever you hear the thing of like, you can't handle the truth, or that's kind of the modus operandi of the people, they're basing it on this idea of the noble lie of, well, I had to lie to you because you would. It's basically a way to deflect away from their behavior of like, oh, well, you would have reacted poorly to this because, and I needed to lie to you because otherwise you wouldn't get this other thing done. Um, I I don't know if this is necessarily a noble lie, but kind of a way that I just saw in a show that did this was they it was basically a deception where they were torturing a guy, and then the other guy, they uh, faked out like he had spilled the beans after this other guy had held and prevented him from uh, and not talked when he was being tortured or whatever, and after seeing that felt betrayed, um, and then kind of spilled the beans. And so, like, that's not a great example of a noble lie, but, and it probably isn't one, but that's kind of the headspace, as it were, for it. So, um, the other thing that I got going on Dogma, and this is the stuff that I wrote over a year ago, was whether or not it was even needed because of um, other things. So I kind of cheated. Well, I didn't. Cheating is probably here. Like, where people like redefine words or whatever. So that's kind of what I did here. So that's not good. But um, this is what I wrote down. So, for the definition of dogma, we have a set of principles laid down by an authority as an incontrovertible truth. And at the time, I was reading Thomas Aquinas's, no, not Thomas Aquinas, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And also, I believe I was reading some stuff from E. Michael Jones, Bare Metal. So this kind of stuff was going through my head. Um, So I said a better definition of dogma may be the deductions made by the philosophical thought that have been carried to their logical end, and therefore represent the end conclusion of that philosophy. This lays down how the world using this philosophy must be seen. As not viewing the world in this way means that you are no longer following the philosophical axioms that brought them to that point, then you are therefore using a different philosophical method in your thinking, or possibly creating a new one. As such, dogma doesn't really have a place. This is a conclusion that I came to. If the traditions of uh, thesis, uh, antithesis, which then leads to synthesis exists. Uh, as long as those exist, this pattern will continue and reoccur, and it'll be this thing where dogma doesn't really have a place because dogma just simply holds you back, right? So you have this idea, then you smash it against the real world. Some of it works, some of it breaks. Then you have this other idea that kind of tries to counter it and say, no, this is the better idea. They kind of smash against each other. You pick up the pieces, you grab the parts that worked, the parts that didn't break, you combine them back together, you synthesize this new idea out of it, and then from there you kind of grow. And therefore, if you have dogma, you're basically saying, oh well, yeah, this stuff smashed against the rocks and broke, but we have decided that it's incontrovertible truth, so this stuff can't happen. I'm actually reading Debunking Economics right now, and there's a lot of this because this thesis, antithesis, synthesis cycle is effectively broken in economics. You see that a lot in their conclusions. They'll basically say, well, a Great Depression couldn't happen, so this couldn't be a Great Depression right here, and therefore I will basically warp and bend the model and make all these assumptions to make it so that reality that breaks my model is taken off the table. And so instead of making their models to fit reality, they warp reality to fit their models. And it's not just economics. You see this all over the place. Physics does it all the time. Basically, anywhere where you can just write a paper and it has like real world consequences, but like secondary real world consequences, right? So, physicists and stuff like that, like if an engineer says this bridge will hold X amount of people and then you put X amount of people on it and it collapses, that like there's they're they're not removed enough from the reality of their decisions and their consequences to be able to get away with that kind of stuff. Whereas some of these other intellectual fields are your economics, your physics, your biology, things of that nature, where it has an effect on how we think and view the world and stuff like that. But how much it warps it is kind of hard to quantify, hard to perceive, and outside of economics, generally doesn't have an effect on our society. That's not true either. But again, it's like to trace the line back is such a task that a lot of people kind of don't do it, forget about it, things like that. Um, so I think that was everything I kind of wanted to talk about. And I didn't really answer any questions, but that's just something that's been kind of stuck in my head and bugging me for a long time. So if other people have thoughts on this whole thing, let me know. Because I don't, like, it feels, it's been a thing for so long, and I get that it's a part of a dogma is an appeal to authority, and that will always exist. But it feels like there's something more to this than just simply an appeal to authority. I think it's a many faceted aspect kind of thing, and it definitely has its downsides, but it also has its plus sides. And I think we should try to think about what maybe those plus sides would be, while also trying to walk the narrow path, stay in truth, not lying, not using it to push agendas, things like that. And maybe it ultimately we come to the conclusion that dogma doesn't have a place. It doesn't really fit. It doesn't have a purpose in this world. It basically is just used to perpetuate lies. And hey, if that's the conclusion, that's the conclusion. But I think it's worth investigating. Let's put it that way. So if people kind of have thoughts on it, I would love to hear them down in the descriptions of either BitChute or YouTube or Podbean, because that's where these all are, or over on Social Galactic, where I post the VODs to this and the stream. So thank you guys all for listening. Like, share, subscribe. I need to be more consistent on this. I think it's been like 3 weeks, so my bad. But hopefully you guys have a good day and enjoy your day.